Here in the mobile Bitcoin.com studio, I have my Louisville Slugger here. Do you see that? It will be very helpful around the office. It will be here to help. You see, Andrew never heard of the phrase, the beatings will continue until morale improves. Andrew never heard that. It'll be good for self-defense. I'll tell you, I went to the Louisville Slugger factory this weekend. That's strong stuff. I was disappointed to hear, though, only 17% of Major League Baseball still use a Louisville Slugger. That means that there's something not right about that. That means their product hasn't kept up. However, this is very beautiful. Very beautiful. I'm here in Louisville. I was here for my aunt's memorial. It's just a terrible situation. She passed away back in January, but we had her memorial this weekend. And this morning, we had an incredible event for Nate Morris, who is running for the U.S. Senate, to replace the McConnell Mafia. And McConnell is one of the worst U.S. senators. He's been a disaster, and Nate Morris is going to do a phenomenal job replacing him in Kentucky. We had an amazing event. We'll talk about that. But breaking news over the weekend, it was reported that the Big Beautiful Bill passed, but it didn't actually pass. The Big Beautiful Bill passed quorum. So the Senate has all these goofy rules where you have to go through these parliamentarian procedures, and you have basically a voterama. So there are several steps to do this. Number one, you have to do a procedural vote. You have to read the entire bill on the floor. You have up to 20 hours of debate, then a voterama on amendments. And the amendments are going to be out of control. They are going to be just the most goofy things you could possibly imagine. I want to have a pigeon factory in Wyoming. I want to have an estuary for deer in Tennessee. Every possible giveaway you can imagine. And then they return the bill to pass the House. Now, the House has to be agreeable to all this. This cloture vote is what gets highlighted a lot, because when a bill is getting filibustered, this is the vote it has to clear to not be filibustered. So this is the key. This is the fundamental vote, and it has passed a major hurdle. However, Elizabeth McDonough, that we talked about last week, she was up to her games this last weekend. So here's the Big Beautiful Bill as it stands. So the remittance tax was 3%, which is a huge part of the Big Beautiful Bill, which taxes money from America to Mexico and puts a tax on basically illegal immigration. Now, some people will say, well, it weakens the U.S. dollar. That's a fair point. I think it's worth the cost to say that we are going to make a firm stand against the idea that you can come to this country, you can come here illegally, take money, and send it back to your home country. So the Senate has reduced the remittance tax from 3% to 1%. The House raised the debt ceiling up to $4 trillion. The Senate went up to $5 trillion. The child tax credit went from $2,500 per kid down to $2,200 per kid. The SALT deduction cap, honestly, this was the best thing the Senate did over the weekend. I think SALT is a total scam, and SALT is basically a subsidy of blue states. SALT is state and local tax deductions. A lot of people from California and New York are going to be emailing us because they're big fans of SALT. SALT allows states that are dysfunctional with big pension funds, with unregulated teacher unions, to be able to have these proven failure of policies over periods of time continue. And so this went from a $40,000 permanent SALT deduction in the House to a $10,000 temporary SALT deduction. Now, whether or not we're still going to get Mike Lawler and the SALT caucus to vote for this in the House, that remains to be seen. The senior tax deduction went from $4,000 up to $6,000. Now, here are some of the things that were removed by the Senate Parliamentarian. Some of this is goofy, but honestly, some of this is really important. The defunding of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau removed from the Parliamentarian. $1.4 billion in pay cuts to the Federal Reserve staff. How is that not budgetary? Can someone explain to me how that is not reconciliation, how that is not spending? What is she judging this based on out of? The elimination of the Office of Financial Research, she's keeping that. Notice I'm saying she's keeping as if she's some sort of office holder. That like she's in charge of the legislative agenda of President Trump. So she is literally calling these shots. Now the Senate can override them. I think they should entertain that. The acceleration of Medicaid provider tax cuts? Nope. The dissolution of Public Company Accounting Oversight Board? Nope. The Crenshaw Amendment, which is banning gender-affirming care under Medicaid, that is staying. The restrictions of non-citizens immigrant health care coverage. Now, I think that actually got figured out in some sort of wording, but a ban on illegals getting food stamps, that remains. A repeal of the EPA 2026 vehicle emissions is removed. Mandate for USPS to sell electric vehicles, that got removed. Removal of a silencer regulation under the NFA, that got removed. That one I can understand. That's hardly budgetary. An expansion of Pell Grants for short-term workforce, that got removed. But here are the major wins that got kept. And look, the Parliamentarian, Elizabeth McDonough, she just went through and she took like a bat like this and she said, nope, 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 nope. And that is Elizabeth McDonough right there, who basically was just calling shots over this entire bill. The Senate can decide to overrule Elizabeth McDonough. Let me be clear. An unelected Senate staffer should not be mentioned on the Charlie Kirk Show, ever. That should be just a rule. On national radio, on our program, we should not be spending time about Elizabeth McDonough. I bet she has great table manners. I bet she's very charitable. I bet she's a wonderful person. She's a Harry Reid appointee. She's helped Democrats. She's helped Republicans before, stopped down big legislation. But at this point, the fact that we are even talking about Elizabeth McDonough as if she's some sort of power source in the Senate, no one voted for her. She was not even Senate confirmed. It's like this weird workaround. She is gumming up the works, and the Senate can override her. And let me tell you, the Senate should not override. The silencer thing, obviously, I care about that. I'm super pro Second Amendment, but that's a reach. That shouldn't have been in the bill. I get that. But this is what should be in there. Ban food stamps for illegal immigrants? Yes. Override McDonough on banning SNAP benefits for undocumented immigrants, or they say undocumented, for illegals. That is worth the fight. If you want to talk about a place where it's willing to cast away Senate decorum, and we have Mark Wayne Mullin, I'm going to ask him this question directly, that when if we are giving food stamps to illegals, that is a great fight to pick to overrule the Senate Parliamentarian. And so the components that are kept in the bill are also significant. We keep the Trump tax cuts, $2,200 per child tax cut. We have deductible income for workers up to $25,000 in tip income, up to $12,500 in overtime income. We keep all the border stuff basically. It's funny, all the new spending, you could spend as much new money as you want in this process. McDonough's fine spending new money, but it's very hard to cut old spending. The bill hits hundreds of things, literally. Hopefully most are good. We're still reading the whole bill. The most key thing about this is that this is a means to deliver on Trump's campaign promise. And in America, people should be able to get what they voted for. We get 1,875 new ICE agents, 2,500 next year, $600 million from our recruiting and hiring support, $1 billion for military deployment in support of border operations, $46.5 billion for a physical border wall. Everybody, I want to take you back to 2016. You know that we could not get any funding or any approval from the U.S. Senate back in 2016, 2017, 2018 because of Mitch McConnell and John McCain for the border wall? We have $46 billion, everybody. The border wall is funded. I know that we don't talk about build the wall much anymore because we have other problems because they're in the wall. The enemy is in the gates, where back in 2016 they were still outside the gates. The enemy has come into the gates the last couple of years under Joe Biden, but the wall is fully funded. Unfortunately, the defense spending is still remaining $150 billion in new Department of Defense funding. I support our military. I think that we could probably be a little bit more cost efficient there, but it is what it is. So basically, we keep the tax cuts. We keep no tax on tips. We kept no tax on tips, right, Danny? Kept no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, and we kept all the border stuff. That's a mandate bill. Now, we got to focus on this no food stamps for illegals, and they're working on the Medicaid stuff. The food stamps for illegals is worth overturning McDonough. We should not talk about Elizabeth McDonough on the show. No one should know who she is. She should just be a silent actor. She's a staffer. I have confidence they're going to figure this out. But the fact that we cannot restrict food stamp benefits for illegals because some technocrat Senate staffer says no, I don't know what form of government that is, but that's not a democracy. That's not a republic. Remember, she has exactly as much power as the Senate gives her. So they can change any rule by majority of vote, and I think it's time to override Elizabeth McDonough on that provision in particular. We have the amazing Student Action Summit coming up literally in a week and a half. Can you believe it? It's going to be an amazing event. We're so excited about the crowds and the energy and the enthusiasm. We have Kristi Noem. We have Tucker Carlson. We have Pete Hegseth. We have the biggest speakers in the movement. Let's play it. Let's play Cut 51.
They said Gen Z would stay silent, that we'd back down, that we'd forget what's worth fighting for. But this generation remembers. We remember truth. We remember freedom. And now, we rise. This is more than a conference. It's a call to action, to reclaim the future, to ignite a movement that cannot be ignored. Student Action Summit 2025, featuring the boldest voices in the fight. Charlie Kirk, Secretary Pete Hegseth, Tucker Carlson, Steve Bannon, Brett Cooper, Secretary Kristi Noem, Riley Gaines, Brandon Tatum, Jack Posobiec, Laura Ingraham, Megyn Kelly, Greg Gutfeld, Tom Homan, Congressman Byron Donalds, Russell Brand, Savannah Chrisley. Join thousands of patriots, future leaders, and freedom fighters of all ages. This is the battleground of ideas. This is the Student Action Summit. Register now at sas2025.com.
Joining us now is Senator Markwayne Mullin from the great state of Oklahoma. Senator, thank you for taking the time here. You are the official liaison between the House and the Senate. So part of this process is passing stuff that we know the House can pass, and some of the stuff got cut out by the Parliamentarian. So, Senator, I have a two-part question. Number one, please give us the update. But number two, can you please explain to us, is there any way that we can get like the no food stamps for illegals back in the bill, even though the Parliamentarian struck it down? Senator.
Yeah, first of all, sorry about the shot. We are running on and off the floor, so I'm stuck down in the basement trying to make this work off of iPhone. So where we're at with the bill, we're going through this voterama. We'll probably finish up late tonight. I would say just because the dog and pony show, the Democrats want to show that they're fighting, which is just like a spoiled child. So they're probably going to go through the prime time shows. Sometimes after the prime time shows go off the air, they'll probably quit their fight around 11 o'clock Eastern time or so. As far as the Parliamentarian kicking this stuff out, keep in mind the Byrd Rule, which the Byrd Rule exists to allow us to do reconciliation. Without the Byrd Rule, you can't do reconciliation because all appropriation bills require 60 votes in the Senate, not just a simple majority. And the Byrd Rule specifically requires you to only deal with mandatory spending, not discretionary spending. Discretionary is what we do through the appropriation process. Mandatory spending's Medicaid, Medicare, Social Security. We can't touch Social Security, and it has to deal with taxes. No policy. So what she ruled on the food stamp issue was that should have go into the appropriation bills, such as the Farm Bill. And the only way to override her is it takes 60 votes. So we can still put the amendment in. Every Republican can vote for it, but we need 6 Democrats to vote with us to be able to override the Parliamentarian on that. There are some amendments that are moving forward to try to override her, but we won't get a single Democrat to support this.
Right. So, but just two questions on that. So you cannot override the Parliamentarian on simple majority vote. Is that right?
No. Not on this. If it was outside of reconciliation, there's some cases to which you can, but because reconciliation exists only for a funding policy, a procedure through Byrd Rule, you can't. It's very specific, and keep in mind the House doesn't have to deal with Parliamentarian Byrd Rules. We do in the Senate because the House can always operate off simple majority. So the Byrd Rule made it possible to do a funding bill by a simple majority in both houses.
But and correct me if I'm wrong, Senator, but can't reconciliation rules be changed by majority vote?
You can change the rules, but that also takes 60 votes. So it's a way. Keep in mind the Senate was designed for the purpose of the majority rules. The House was. The Senate was designed to slow down and give the minority a voice. That was the way our founding fathers set it up. You know this as good as anybody does. So there's certain rules that are in place, and they've been in place forever. And in order to change those rules, once again, the majority can't simply override the minority in this. It will take 60 votes. In some cases, it actually takes 2/3. And it's frustrating as heck. Listen, as a former House member, Charlie, I used to get as mad as anybody about it. Just override them. Just override them. Yes, you can override them. You can also, now the leader can remove the Parliamentarian, but in this case, is it one of those questions that you should remove the Parliamentarian over? Now, keep in mind that same Parliamentarian kept Bernie Sanders from being able to put the minimum wage increase when Biden did reconciliation. This same parliamentarian also kept Bernie Sanders
I know that.
from doing amnesty.
No, we've been very I think you're right. No, you're right. We've been fair on McDonough, but right now I think she's out of control. But Senator, we have a minute here, and thank you for being generous with your time. But there is a nuclear option. I just want to make sure I'm clear with the audience. You can go nuclear, right? Which I think is like Rule 5, where we did with Supreme Court justice. I'm not even saying we should do it. I know that people will lose their mind. But if we're saying that we can't all of a sudden, we have to keep on giving food stamps to illegal aliens, I mean, come on. Well, that's a fight I think that is worth happening.
Yeah. Well, we can change it through the appropriations through discretionary spending. What the parliamentarian ruled is this isn't mandatory spending, meaning that Congress doesn't have to automatically spend the money, which she's absolutely correct on that. But when we do discretionary spending through the appropriation process, that's one of the 12 bills. She's saying that's where that belongs, and you can have that fight then. When we do the appropriation process, you can go nuclear on some of that stuff and change it from majority to minority, but not through the whole appropriation bill. Because as I repeat myself here, the Senate was designed to give the minority a voice, which is why we were able to keep so much stuff when Nancy Pelosi was ruling the House, is why we were able to keep so much stuff from moving forward, even though at that time we had Harry Reid running the Senate.
No, that is correct. I respect that. No, trust me, I do respect. And Senator, please stay for another segment. And I'm expressing my frustration and the audience's frustration because it seems arbitrary, and I don't think we should be in the business of defending every decision of an unelected Senate staffer. I'm with you. She was helpful with some of the Bernie stuff, but some of this seems so outrageous.
If your portfolio is over $250,000 and you aren't hedged, you are sitting on a ticking time bomb. Markets are at all-time highs, but history shows, you know what comes next: volatility and increased risk. A 10% allocation to gold and silver can help hedge uncertainty and protect your wealth. Noble Gold Investments makes it easy to hedge your portfolio with institutional-grade gold and silver. Right now, every qualified investment will receive a free 10-ounce gold coin and protect your portfolio today. Visit noblegoldinvestments.com.
So, Senator, just humor me, and I know you're doing a great job, and this is the audience's frustration directed towards the system and the compromising of the mandate. But let's say we did remove the parliamentarian with someone that would be more sympathetic, that would be more fair-minded. If we can't do it just via rule, what would that look like? What would happen? Would some of your other colleagues potentially erupt in anger? Has it ever happened before? Please walk us through that scenario.
Well, technically, I'm thinking here. Technically, you could do it. But you're not guaranteed that the next parliamentarian is going to be any better because they have to interpret what the Byrd rule is. It's kind of like a judge is supposed to interpret the Constitution, but it's funny that you get, a 6-3 decision all the time out of the court. I mean, either it's constitutional or it's not. I know that's your frustration too. So you're not guaranteed to get a different outcome from a different parliamentarian. You can just do the best you can. However, if you did do it, the leader could fire the person. It could trigger a vote, and I would say you would have at least 10 Republicans that would vote with the Democrats to probably override the leader in that, unless it was for a legal purpose or a job performing purpose, meaning job performing, like she didn't show up to work or something like that. That would be grounds of firing. That'd be the only reason why we wouldn't have to a vote couldn't be called to override the leader.
Got it. Yeah, so that's not shocking to me. It's disappointing. I think it's rather pathetic, but it's not disappointing. And I want to get to some of the wins. I don't want to stay in the negative, but I have to. I represent the audience. The audience is on top of this issue. Just to make sure I understand, we have to now live with the parliamentarian. Is there any way to change the wording? Because even from people that were once sympathetic to the parliamentarian, I've been getting messages from members, from the administration, and also in the Senate. They think she is reaching way too far here. It's incredibly arbitrary. There's no board, there's no council, there's no committee. It's just her mind that gets in the way of 75 million people that voted. Something seems really imbalanced there. So is there any way to try to compromise with her? Can you meet with her? Can you negotiate? What's the process here? Is it like you submit your homework and the teacher grades it? Like, walk us through some of the sausage making here.
Charlie, actually, that's a good example. You can submit your homework, and a teacher grades it, except with the parliamentarian, she doesn't just exit out. She will exit out, and then you can meet with her and say, how can I change this to get my grade better? She's one of those individuals that will let you do that. So what she'll do is she'll work with the language, explain what your ruling is. I stopped good, by the way. But she will allow you to change your wording if it's possible. But if it's ruled that this funding specifically is in discretionary spending zone, which is where the SNAP program for the most part is, it's in the Farm Bill, which is discretionary spending, then it's hard to actually move that into mandatory because you'd have to draw mandatory that it's inside Medicaid or Medicare. And that doesn't fall inside Medicare or Medicaid, the SNAP program. So that's a little more difficult to do. On some of the other programs that she's kicked out, we was able to go in and rewrite them. She will help us with some of the language to write it to make it within the Byrd rule. The problem when you do that, sometimes it changes what your objective is, because during the Byrd rule, it has to do with revenue only. It can't do with policy. So anything that does with policy can't be in there. Revenue. So taxes or increasing or decreasing mandatory spending. That's a very, very narrow window we have to fight in.
Yeah. So just something to think about to bring back to your conference. I think you got. No, please finish your thought.
I was going to say, I get this is very frustrating. It's very frustrating to me. And the rules in the Senate are so old, so ridiculous, and need to be reworked. And the reason why they've never been reworked is because when you rework rules, a lot of cases it actually takes 2/3 of the Senate to actually agree. So just for instance, I know this is stupid. We can have water and milk on the floor, but you're not allowed to have coffee. I can go to the floor wearing a tie and a jacket and no shirt, but I have to have long pants on, and closed-toe shoes. And these rules have been there, I don't know, before I was there, and way before probably Chuck Grassley was there, and that you can't get them changed. It is the most frustrating thing you've ever seen.
All right, well, here's what we need. I want to get to the victories here. We got 4 minutes, then I got to let you go vote. We got to have the Trump rules. You're allowed Diet Coke. You have to wear a red tie if you're a Republican. And how about we fix this whole parliamentarian thing? Just bring it back to your conference. You can say, hey, I was just on the Charlie Kirk show. We had a polite conversation. Let me tell you, people are pissed. And that we had this wonderful election, we worked so hard, and then some unelected Senate staffer can just say, no, especially food stamps are illegal. So I think you guys should consider termination. Trent Lott did it in 2001. I know there was retribution from that, but we are in special times. Now, with that being said, we'll just put a capstone on that. Senator, go back to your conference, do that. We're going to socialize this. And you've been a good sport with all this. I know you have to interpret all this. Talk about the wins. 4 minutes uninterrupted, Senator. What are the wins we got out of this? Because it's not all bad. In fact, it's overwhelmingly good. It's more than 80% of the pie. Senator, please.
Well, we're making tax cuts permanent. We're securing the border. You talked about that previously. We're defending our country by plussing up the DOD. We're making sure that we're energy independent, and at the same time, we're boosting take-home pay to the average household of four. Their take-home pay this year, compared to last year, will be $10,000 higher. We're locking in the economic policies for Trump. We're cutting $1.6 trillion in deficit, which is the largest deficit reduction in any Congress or in the history of Congress, which is massive. And there's a lie out there being told too, Charlie. There's a lie that the Democrats are spreading, that a lot of the media has picked up, that we're adding $3.3 trillion in deficit. That's a lie. And what they're lying about is the CBO scored this bill two ways. One, they scored it with saying, hey, let the taxes expire. This is what the Democrats said. If we let the taxes expire that we're currently operating on, which is called current policy, what's the deficit on that? Well, since the tax, if we let them expire, it's $4 trillion plus to the Washington, D.C. bureaucrats to spend. If we allow it to expire, the CBO said, well, then you have a $3.3 trillion deficit. But if you let current policy, which is the current taxes that we're currently in, continue to move forward, it actually is a $507 billion surplus. So we're not, it's all about numbers, and it's ridiculous numbers, but the media and the left is spreading the lie by saying this is a $3.3 trillion deficit increase.
Right. And again, the supercharging of the economy is underrated here. It's about growth, border. And so, Senator, last question. What is a voterama, and what amendments do you anticipate being added to the bill? Anything, and does that also have to go through a bird bath too, is the amendments? So really quick, about a minute remaining on those two elements.
Yeah, so any amendment has to go through the bird bath. The parliamentarian will rule if it's within the bird rule or if it's out. If it's out, it's 60 votes. If it's in, it's 51. Voterama means that we vote as long as people can last, which, Chuck Schumer's pretty old. Leader Thune's pretty fit. I think the Republicans can outlast the Democrats on this one. They can put any amendment forward. There's nothing that stops anybody from putting any amendment on the floor. And it's as many as you can get in until you can't keep your eyes open anymore. And it's one of these crazy rules that once again the Senate has. As far as getting in there, Rick Scott's got a provision that could possibly change the FMAPs back, and it'd give you 5 years. What it does is it goes at some of the Medicare expansion that happened underneath Obamacare. It brings it back in and makes you focus specifically on the areas that need it the most, meaning that we have 35 million people inside the United States that live under the poverty line. Over 70 million are signed up for Medicaid. Those numbers don't work. Why do we have so many people gaming the system? It's because of the FMAPs, and so that's one amendment that could help, and it would decrease the deficit, secure Medicaid for those that need it the most, and make sure that people that are on there deserve it, not people that are on there because they're too lazy to work.
Senator, you got to go vote. Thanks for your time. And
Yes.
deliver that
Thank
message
you.
back to your conference. Do not dismiss the idea of firing her. Do not dismiss it.
And
Thank
Diet
you so
Coke.
much,
And
Senator.
Diet
Appreciate
Coke.
it.
And red ties.
And Diet Coke. Both of those together. That's right. Yes, sir. That's right. See you soon. Look, here's the takeaway. And I wanted to have that. I wanted to get all the facts out there for you, the audience, because your information is power for you guys. Knowledge is ammunition. The lesson is this. The person who rules you is the person you let rule you. And right now, the U.S. Senate, they have to start to think a little bit more creatively. They only have a majority because you guys gave them a majority. And if you got to go nuclear, you got to change some rules. By the way, the July 4th deadline that President Trump said, hey, I want it by July 4th, that's a self-imposed deadline. If it has to go another week to have a rule vote, here's what I've learned about the Senate. And I like Mark Wayne Mullin. We don't agree on everything, but he's a wrestler. He has energy, unlike some of these other senators that have just no spunk, no spirit. At least he'll talk. You can get answers out of him. I'll tell you, so many of these senators, they just don't want to work. You know what the Senate schedule is under regular order? I kid you not. You arrive Tuesday early afternoon and you leave Thursday afternoon. That is their work schedule. Tuesday evening, all day Wednesday, Thursday till afternoon, they fly back to wherever they want to go. They go to Florida, they go back to their constituency. It's literally 2.5 days of work. And you guys can, you have this whole conversation where you have to debate, we have to work weekends. I'm sorry, a lot of people in this audience, they are EMTs, they are nurses, they work Christmas, they work weekends. The Congress is like an unheard of concept to work holidays and weekends. They're above that. They're the ruling class. Don't you understand? They need their Christmas break. Remember we did that whole show back in November, December, of how much of our national debt and our public policy is hinged on the most expensive Christmas vacation ever? The most expensive Christmas vacation is they'll just decide to go spend a couple $1 trillion because they're tired. I want to go home on Christmas vacation. Republicans need to start playing hardball here. It's time for us to just throw it down and say, you know what? We won this election. The deep state is against us. The intel agencies are against us. We finally have cultural energy. We're not going to get in the way of our core promises. And our core promises are very simple, which is illegals should not be getting food stamps. Hold on a second. They are foreigners in our country receiving government benefits so they can go get SNAP benefits and EBT cards. We're not going to put up with that. Is a red line. You want to talk about a red line? I'll draw it with my Louisville Slugger. That is a red line. Okay? It's a red line. Very simple. We're not going to put up with that. And you got to fire the parliamentarian fine. Let a bunch of people scream. But no, you might have missed it. Mark Wayne Mullin told you. That's why I really wanted to have that conversation respectfully. Let's try to flush it out. Let's get to the bottom of it. Let's try to figure it out. He said, well, 10 Republicans would side with Democrats and they would just lose their mind. Now we have the core problem. Now we have revealed the issue. The issue is in front of us. It's that 10 Republicans are holding the entire conference hostage because they're more sympathetic to the Democrat cause than the Republican cause. And look, we got some we got some benefits on, I'm going to read some of this. We got some SNAP eligibility. But it's still, the idea that illegals are going to keep on getting food stamps, that should be verboten. We shouldn't put up with it. The fact that there are 10 Republicans, listen, 10 Republicans that would go vote if we fire the parliamentarian is exactly why I'm here in Kentucky. Mitch McConnell is resigning, and he's not seeking re-election. Here is a real pickup opportunity to have someone that would not be one of those 10. One of my life's missions at Turning Point Action and our advocacy here on the Charlie Kirk Show is make that 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. It doesn't mean we have to agree on everything. It's, are you in the Republican Party to win? Are you here to use power for the good of the country, or are you here to protect some sort of antiquated ancestral institution where you can't have water and milk on the Senate floor? And what does that even mean? Democrats play to win. You got Letitia James out there who's trying to put Donald Trump in prison for 700 years, taking his business empire away from him. I'm not even recommending that. You have Fannie Willis. You had Alvin Bragg. You had Jack Smith. They went after us with everything they had. Now, part of that, resulted in a backlash, so you got to be a little bit careful with that stuff. But at least it shows that they were playing to win, and they ended up losing big time. The Republican Senate is at a crossroads right now, where even unelected Senate staffers, I got to just, and I'm going to call Markwayne Mullin after this. I'm going to call a couple senators. I say, guys, just slow down a second. Do you hear yourself? You're saying, well, she won't allow this. And what she won't allow? What are you talking about? She won't allow. She works for you. I mean, one thing if she was some sort of, constitutional provision that our founders put in. Senate Parliamentarian is not in the U.S. Constitution. It's like handed down from parts of Article 1. It's read into there. Obviously, it's constitutional, but it's not explicitly in the Constitution. Do you hear yourself? Oh, she's not going to allow this. And I have full respect for a lot of the guests that have on the program that needless to say, but hold on, back up. Who should be calling the shots? The American people call the shots. That's the system we have here. We don't have an oligarchy. Who voted for her? Now, getting mad at the parliamentarian is totally understandable. But the key is this, and that's where I want to now bring you to the next level. Technically, she has no power. So in some ways, the senators, they want you to be mad at the parliamentarian. And here's the game. Some of the senators want you to get really angry at the parliamentarian because, in essence, she has no power. The senators have the power. She is a veneer. She is a very helpful punching bag. So getting mad at the parliamentarians like, rah! Okay, it's a shield. Who has propped up the shield? Who has funded the shield? Who has voted for the shield? Everything that happens because senators want it to happen. Period. End of story. And you can go nuclear. I know that people might not like it. People might get upset. Oh, my goodness. Have we learned anything? All the hysteria from the left is largely unfounded. The world's going to end because of climate change. The world is going to end because Trump is leading us to a war with Iran. All that stuff was nonsense. It was garbage. All of the rules of the Senate, the parliamentarian, the filibuster, the indefinite holds, the glacial pace, they all protect the senators from having to deliver on their promises. And they have endless excuses for inaction. Endless. And a lot of these guys are my friends. And I think they're on board with me, by the way. I think that the old crows, I think Mitch McConnell and the old crow demo, we can't upset the apple cart. I'm sorry, the American people voted for that in November. So it's either we have an oligarchy of a philosopher king ruling class that is entrenched over all of us that calls the shots, or the American people are in charge. Which is it? Do you notice how many old institutions get the way of President Trump? The deep state, the administrative state, the courts got the way of Donald Trump, and now the U.S. Senate is getting in the way of the people. It's as if there are all these places that have been built to fortify the defenses against the will of the people, and that's unhealthy and that's wrong. And that's exactly what brought me to Kentucky, to endorse Nate Morris to try to then replace Mitch McConnell, because if we don't actually start replacing in Republican primaries and act that the divide is not Republican-Democrat, that's part of the divide. The divide is oligarchy versus representative government. It is citizen versus oligarch. And the U.S. Senate should say, you know what, enough, thank you. We don't work for you, Miss McDonough. We're changing the rules, and we're going to make sure illegals don't get public benefits.